It's pretty clear just from some of the first shots of Perfect Blue, some of the first creative uses of match cuts and intercuts, the paradox that it tries to resolve. Read even deeper into this psycho-thriller cult classic and debut feature by Satoshi Kon, and you find a brooding examination of duality that relates not only to an animated J-pop group member, but also to us, millennials, modern, everyday people, users connected on digital networks. In a world increasingly dependent on virtual relations, we too risk a kind of joint psychosis. Released on the brink of the internet explosion in 1997, Perfect Blue discusses such issues of identity, celebrity culture, and technology's role in the backdrop of a story regarding a pop star who quits singing to pursue acting. J-pop and K-pop retain the same, if not heightened, intensity since their inception in the 90s, and what they boil down to is an agreement. An unspoken agreement between two sides, like a conversation, starkly similar to Goffman's dramaturgical perspective. Except here it is between the mediated, manufactured female idols and the fervent, almost cultish otaku and uncle fans. On the side of the idols, everything from their image to their likes and dislikes are determined by the companies that have signed them and fostered them into singers and dancers since ages as early as 10 to 12. The K-pop and J-pop industry are more interested in selling images or an experience over the actual music itself, and with that, idols are expected to lay down their private lives and be public paragons of purity, chastity, and naive innocence. On the other end, the rabid otaku buy into the image, predominantly male fans objectifying these idols, always anchoring the idol in relation to themselves. This isn't to generalize, but nonetheless, times when this unspoken contract is broken are often disturbing and troubling. This is not an industry for talent, it's one for an emotional connection, however fabricated and commercialized. And with social media's infringement into private life and the expectation of idols to maintain a digital presence, it is understandable how this industry has not just become more global, but also hyper-mediated. While it is crucial to note how nuances have surfaced in the wake of feminist movements and overt corporate decisions to be quote-unquote edgier, still the question comes up, where do you draw the line between image and identity? Perfect Blue supposes that perhaps there is no line at all, as all hell breaks loose for Mima, her managers, and her manic fan Mimania, all obsessively trapped in one mass delusion. We'll get back to that in a bit, but the intercutting, the death threats, Mimania angling his hand to make it seem as if Mima is dancing on his palm, all highlight the troubling idol-otaku dynamic. More significantly, the website Mima's Room, which recounts Mima's daily activities with excruciating detail, functions as the height of these fans' obsession. The fact that they know what she's thinking begins to haunt her. Her detachment from reality grows synonymous with the further she leaves her idol life behind and the more disappointed her raving fans seem. It's clear, though, that Mima needs this maturation into acting. An actress differs starkly from an idol in that actresses control their images, capable of transforming at will like chameleons. But an idol's image is never theirs to decide. This liminal state that Perfect Blue takes place in between Mima shedding her previous image to discovering her own identity is nothing more than a grotesque picture of self-imaging on modern digital networks. After all, how much is our virtual identity influenced by either the platform itself or other users? Where do we draw the line between what you present and who you are? Just as the stalkerish web diary Mima's room becomes an anchor to tell the increasingly untethered Mima what she did that day, social networks too tell an increasingly pacified mass how to act. Fictions woven by the media industry, by celebrity culture, by digital networks unravel any tightly conceived sense of self. Whereas Mima has sought to seize control of her image, going into acting instead causes her to lose any semblance of identity. She vacillates between the surreal reality and the realistic virtuality of a TV show conveniently named Double Bind. Satoshi Kon incorporates seamless match cuts and transitions guided by lighting, exposure, and color to disorient us, the viewers, as well, to hijack our eyes. Even though we see the film as animated, the narrative structure crumbles right before our eyes, leaving us in a similar limbo state of familiarity and uncanniness. And Kon more than once pulls out to reveal to us that all is fantasy. It is no coincidence then that the gruesome murders all involve the stabbing of the eye, in reference to the very origin of image. The eye is, after all, what impregnates the mind with reality and thus delusion. Kon proliferates Perfect Blue with cameras, with displays, all to demonstrate the splintering of the self before us, right in front of our eyes. Mima plunges deep into the rabbit hole of madness, chasing after her past self, a self that, frankly, however controlled and manufactured, took her form. Once too pure to stake a claim of identity, Mima's psychosis is planted the moment she leaves Cham, stepping into a lion's den where everyone has an image of Mima they want to preserve. And this draws a horrific parallel to social media, where again, between YouTube, Twitch, and even just selfies, puts us in her position. Whereas technology seems to have granted us control in self-presentation, like Mima, are we instead still unknowingly beholden to the expectations of others? When even we can no longer distinguish between reality and fantasy, Mima's psychosis is complete. She is alone, lost, wholly untethered. Only, it isn't just her. As a matter of fact, Kon supposes 3 different parties to be subject to the psychosis: Mima, her managers Tadakoro and Rumi, and Mimania. Mimania is seen hallucinating, staunchly believing the new Mima is a fake. Tadakoro can only see things in relation to what is profitable to the industry. And Rumi, well, Rumi is virtual Mima. A former and failed idol herself, she lives vicariously off Mima's idol image and wants her to stay forever pure, forever an idol. Theories abound regarding madness, fantasy, and reality, and that's just a badge of a near-perfect film. But just based on what is depicted by Kon, it is really left to one's interpretation regarding who lives in whose delusion, whose nightmare is the events of Perfect Blue. Satoshi Kon shows us an idol culture stripped of the bubblegum facade, one reduced to desperate vies for control over illusions, heightened to the extent in which Mima's personal struggle no longer seems to be just hers. People discuss her profitability and trajectory. Mima's room dictates her reality. Mimania gouges the eyes of anyone who frames Mima in a way he doesn't agree with. Rumi wishes to rid the new Mima completely, so that she can live on as popstar Mima. Everyone, it seems, lives within a shared delusion. And perhaps the same is true now. Perhaps Kon is giving us a glimpse of how Japan's idol culture has spilled into internet culture, both fostering self-imaging and offering virtual forms of emotional connection. Modern media acts as an incubator for alter egos, a place where one is not quite themselves, placing particular emphasis on what is deemed desirable or, at the very least, conforming. But again, it is never about a single particular user. As much as it may feel like our Facebook accounts, Instagram feeds, or Snapchat stories belong to us, the nature of social media and digital network is not about servicing one single individual. It's safe to say then that all participating members, including the platforms themselves, engage in a similar form of delusion. It may be a stretch to call it that, but nevertheless, the internet is indeed a different universe one can easily get lost in. And it exists solely because, like money, Salem witches, and idol culture, everyone believes in it. We're all somewhat similar to Mima, a J-pop idol turned actress coping with the fragmented liminal self and under the watchful eyes of the many. I'm sure it isn't easy for most of us now to accept impermanence, embrace growing pains in the face of the stillness of images. But just as Mima allegedly comes to, once the people seeing her only in relation to themselves meet their demise one by one, perhaps all we need to do is see past the proscenium arch. Social networks, of course, aren't all bad, just when it defines us, when we let countless other sets of eyes determine who we are. Idol culture too, despite the hyper-intensity and globalized nature in the modern day, sees some improvements in how idols are represented. While some companies still predictably control the kind of SNS posts these idols make, they have also opened a portal into a much more intimate side of the idol, letting their own personalities and identity shine. Sites online have even become platforms for idols to speak out against sexism, to firmly declare and assert who they are. And backlash against breaches of purity still abound, but again, that's digital cultures for you. In the end, Mima asserts her present self, not by letting her past self go, but by embracing it. Reality and fantasy are once again separated when she unifies all her dissociated, splintered selves. It isn't a rejection of her past purity, nor is it a return to it. Rather, it is firmly believing that everything now is real, because it is in her power to determine that for herself, not anyone else's. And perhaps the same holds true for us. Rather than giving us a definitive answer, Perfect Blue allows us to take the first step, to question our own imaginations. As the curtains fall, Kon is pulling away to let us know it was all an illusion.
そういったものを自分の中で超えて、私はここにいるっていうことをきちっと取り戻す。そのためには誰の助けも借りられなくて、自分で乗り越えるしかないっていうような